This is John Howler. I do prophecy updates, I do Israel updates, and I also have been blessed over time to participate in um, interviewed by my good friend Mark Sutherland from the UK. We joke a lot back and forth. We communicate quite regularly, probably more with each other than probably any other people that we communicate with other than our spouses. But Mark, thanks so much for doing this. And so usually Mark interviews me. Today we're going to turn the tables and I'm going to mostly interview Mark. So we're going to put this up on my channel. We'll put it up on Mark's channel. So Mark, welcome to our combo report, I guess we could call it this week.
John, it's great to be here, and I'm very grateful for our messages and your sense of humor. As I think I've even said to you today, John Haller needs to be doing stand up around the subject of golf. That is what he should be doing. Some people may say that's what he does every single Sunday when he's giving his prophecy update, but I'll leave you to decide that.
Well, I think humor helps in the world, and you can't have a sense of, you can't play golf. You really need a sense of humor to play golf because it's a very inexplicable game. And I will just say that the joy in golf, this is why golf is so difficult in case people are actually interested. The joy in golf is hitting the golf ball. But the fewer times you have it, the more fun you have. The fewer times you hit it, the more fun you have. So it's sort of like a schizophrenic idea about why it's a fun game. And we do appreciate the Brits. The Brits have given us a lot of things like the Magna Carta and golf. And then they've given us some things that we don't really understand, like some good, but a lot of really bad monarchs. And now you're in just an absolute insane political environment in a country that is, I'm afraid it's a harbinger of what's coming. Well, I don't think it's a harbinger anymore of what's coming to the United States. You're a little bit further on the curve with the problems of a certain world religion and that type of thing. So so I want everybody to get that perspective. But before we get there, I know that you in the past have participated in an event called Burning Man. Tell us what Burning Man is and why would you as a Christian go to Burning Man?
Yes, everyone thinks that if we've gone there as supporting, how can you mix with all these pagans? Well, all these pagans need Jesus, just like you and I and whoever's listening. But Burning Man is the biggest cultural changing event in the world. It's been going on for 24 years. It's in the Black Rock Desert in Nevada. It's a heck of an experience to go. I went last year with my dear friend Carl Tigrib and Audrey and Brian. So we, Van der Clay, so we went there. And the reason why that we go there is because with the seminars and some of the stuff that goes on, John, is there's information that we need together when you are sitting down, hearing the fact, because there is this big push in America and it's been happening for a number of years. But when you are sitting there listening to people going, well, we've got this war chest of $90 to $100 million, and we want to change the law so that hallucinogenic drugs are able to be legalized so people can take that. We then want to push this into the whole medical field so that we can use this in the medical field in regard to mental illness and all the rest. And I'm not kidding you, but this is the direction of travel. You've got that. Of course, you've then got a discussion where people think, oh, isn't it going to be fantastic when the whole of America when every single car is electric, a lorry is electric, and it means that we're going to have unmanned vehicles where you can just, these lorries would just steer themselves across America. How that works out, I really don't know, because you are the third biggest landmass in America. In the world, you rely on your car. I know that. I know some of you just jump in your car and drive 200 yards down the road because maybe you can't be bothered to walk. I'm being sarcastic. That's humor. But because of the
Why would
huge,
you even think that's funny?
well, yeah.
It's 200 yards. I
It's
mean,
200. But the fact, because of the, as a nation, you are a continent. It's huge. So you do a heck of a lot. You do a heck of a lot of driving. But the other thing is, it's the cultural changes. There were over the last couple of the 3-letter agencies, like, you have far too many of them. They attend these places. They attend Burning Man. 2 years ago, I believe there was 50,000 American politicians, types of mayors, etc. They went there. They were shown around because, hear me, you've got this city that takes water in, takes food in, takes all its tents in, takes everything in. It goes into the Black Rock Desert, and then the city leaves. You've got the man that they build. There's a cathedral type that they build that are then burnt. But everyone leaves, and everyone leaves the desert spotless. So the politicians are then studying how communities work, how a big city like this would work. Bear in mind Agenda 21, Agenda 30, which is all being pushed there. Smart cities, we need to get people out of the countryside into these cities, electrified, etc. It's all part of this ethos. It's all part of building community. And you say, well, why do we go? Well, sadly, a lot of the people that attend have had some very, very unfortunate and negative experience with the church. There are a number of people that would have called themselves Christians a while ago. They have walked away from that because they've had very negative experiences or they've been hurt. I mean, I can think of one particular individual who used to be I think a youth pastor, etc. So suddenly when you're in that environment, being the hands and feet of Jesus, it gives you an opportunity to talk to people. But more importantly as well, it's understanding. It's been a huge cultural changer within America. And if we go back historically, okay, you look at by the beginning of the 60s, 63, when JFK sadly was shot, but you look at before that, when he's turning around and saying, we need to get a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Another subject, but I'm just throwing out what he said. Then by the end of the decade, of course, immersed in the Vietnam War, there's all this Marxist revolution, student protests going out on the streets. Now, those students then became professors in in universities, on your side of the pond, maybe on my side of the pond as well. But we look at this. We look at the riots that happened in Paris, etc. But this whole thing of them taking their views, their Marxist views, revolutionary views into university, which they then taught their pupils. Now, Burning Man again is another cultural changer along these lines, because it's influencing society. And if we do not go and attend and find out about these things, then we're not going to be aware of the influences. Now, I'm sorry, it seems though I'm just discussing drugs, but the other thing at Burning Man, there was when I was there was a massive exhibition where street signs have been taken from Ukraine. And so there were people on both sides, from the Ukraine and the Russia conflict. Maybe there were some discussions. I can't remember that at that time. But you saw bullet holes of the street signs, bullets going in one direction, bullets coming out another. As you looked at the signs, you were trying to work out where was the input, where was the output. And the Ukraine, Russia is a very, very important subject, because there's been so much propaganda, and we're really trying to drill down and find out what's going on. And there would be seminars in regard to digital currency and all this kind of thing, John. So it's everything that is influencing American culture, but it's influencing the world. As Burning Man events all over the world, including in the UK. I haven't been to any of those. But the reason why you go, like I had an amazing experience last year, you meet someone in a climate change, talking about climate change seminar where they're going on about, oh, we have to do something about CO2 and all of this. And I just turned around and said, well, I don't believe this. It's just a load of baloney. And a young man there, Ryan, turned around and said, well, I agree with you. And then you have this amazing conversation. And then he ends up coming to your Bible studies that you were having every morning, where as a group we would get to do that.
By the
And
way,
you're,
you call your so Burning Man is like this giant city that's built out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I've seen this desert. I mean, I've flown over it. There's nothing there, but they built a city. But then the city within it has all of these different sections and almost like little villages and camps.
Absolutely.
And so the people, Carl, Tekrib, and friends of ours that you've gone with, you have a very unique name for your camp. And tell us, I don't know who came up with it. I think it's absolutely brilliant and biblical, but what do you call the camp?
Camp of the camp of the unknown God. And by saying that, if someone says to you, so what's your camp called? Well, it's the camp of the unknown God. And you'll go, and they may go, wow, well, what's all that about? And I had that said to me. And then you have this conversation because you then talk about your faith. And in many ways, it's like the only God that isn't really talked about there, which is the one true God, because everything in many ways, of course, you can then argue is going against that. But it's in the book of Acts, and that is what it's then referring to. And then it provokes some incredible conversations. Now, I will say this, it's taken, Carl's been there 6 times. Brian and Audrey have now been there 5 times. It's taken a while. I mean, I think it's taken a while to be able to build up a little bit of sort of formality in one sense, but it's taken a while to then build up relationships, where this year it was exciting with the way the team have expanded, the conversations that people are then having with other people, because one of the problems is, I think, very much with church culture says, look, if you've got all these problems, if you're not perfect, then please go and sort that out before you attend church, and then we'll tell you about Jesus. Sorry, it doesn't work like that in my mind. We are called to accept people as they are. That doesn't mean over time that we excuse behavior. It doesn't. But we are called to accept people as they are. And that's one of the biggest challenges at Burning Man, which is fantastic, to then have those conversations, accept people as they are. And then they're curious. They're asking you, saying, why are you here? Why is that the camp of the unknown God? And you then have this amazing opportunity to then tell them about Jesus. But it's not everyone's cup of tea to go in there. This year, Carl went there a day or two earlier to help set up. There were 75-mile-an-hour winds. At one point, a 15-minute walk back to the camp of the unknown God turned into a 2-hour walk. He totally blinded, hiding behind a big RV and another vehicle to shelter from all the sandstorms. I mean, I've been there when I was there. I think it hit 45 mile an hour, but to be in there at 75 mile an hour, and then you're walking into, hurricane tornado speed, that was frightening. But through that, you're then witnessing, as he was witnessing to people, trying to help them rebuild tents, or keep certain things on the ground, or just encourage people. If we are not the hands and feet of Christ in that situation, but like, I know 1 or 2 people have done this with the awful floods in Texas. There's people that have been down there to help with the clear up, to try and find the young people, sadly, that were swept away and died. So, and people doing that are Christians. I know one or two people personally have done that. So that is witnessing in those situations. But it is, John, the number one thing. It's about the cultural change that's gone on now. And it'd be great for you to have a discussion with Carl about this, because in many ways, this story, I'd rather not steal his thunder. But we as a society, our AI is being unleashed and is an extremely frightening technology that we have unleashed. And frankly, we don't have control of it.
But
My
is that
opinion.
something like, this is something that would be and has been talked about for a while at Burning Man?
Yes.
AI, technology,
Yep.
as Patrick Wood calls it, technocracy,
Yep.
transhumanism.
Yep.
Mark, I two things I don't want to interrupt because I know this is to interview you, but today, in fact, I just sent it to Patrick Wood a couple hours ago. Somebody sent this to me and said, hey, you might want to look into this. And it's an organization. It's called Peter Thiel's Dialogue Network. Have you heard of this?
Is it the one where he's about to talk about the Antichrist?
No. This is something separate. So there's two.
Right.
So Peter Thiel's this big multi-billionaire, claims to be a Christian, lives with a guy, has a male partner, and all this stuff. But in all of his recent interviews over the last 2 months, he's been talking about Antichrist, Bible prophecy, Armageddon, end times, and all this stuff. So I've jokingly in my updates over the prophecy updates over the years, I've said, well, this week we're going to make this guy our guest prophecy updater, and it'll be somebody like Yuval Noah Harari at the World Economic Forum, or speaking in Silicon Valley, where he says this, I love coming to Silicon Valley because this is where the religions that will control humanity in the 21st century are being created. Now, what does that mean? I mean, these things are so bizarre to us. We sort of just dismiss them like, well, now, in addition to his seminar that he's doing in San Francisco over the next, I think it starts in about a week and it goes like 4 weeks. It's also now and again, it's you mentioned Chatham House rules. You can't. You're not. It's it's like Vegas. They used to claim, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But what happens at Peter Thiel's discussions on the Antichrist, no recording, none of that. And I would love to get somebody in there and just to take notes or record, or maybe set up some kind of AI thing that will do it.
But this is why we need to be in these places. This is why we go to Burning Man.
I wanted to say that he set up this thing called the Dialogue Network. And he's going to DC and Virginia for influence.
Wow.
And supposedly, he's thought of as Republican, conservative, that type of thing. But essentially, when I sent it to Patrick, I said, Patrick, what does this sound like? And he says it sounds like the tech version of the Bilderberger Group, where they get to meet, they talk about all these things that are going to change all of our lives, and they're doing it right out in the open under our noses. And it's anything. So I want to go back to Burning Man for a minute. So,
no. What Patrick has said is absolutely right, because at Burning Man there will be people arriving of social media influence and others. They will be having meetings, they're having seminars, but they're meeting with each other and having these discussions. And as I may have said, when in 2023 there's 50 American politicians, mayors turning up, there is a tie-up between all of that, Agenda 21, Agenda 30, devolving power to more and more mayors in America. The way you've got things at the sort of city level, mayors, you've got state, the whole thing of state politically, state finance, then you've got the federal finance, etc. It's, in one sense, it's not complicated, but on another end it is. And over here, we're going through something called devolution, where people don't realize that the whole sort of structure of our nation is being dramatically changed. We may come on to that. But I would say, I think Patrick is right. And I'd say when Peter Thiel says this kind of thing, we've got to start thinking in duality. So today, or when we're recording this conversation, Melania Trump has just, I think I sent it to you today, where she's launching like an AI education thing to get children to be aware of AI, or maybe an AI competition of something. So it's coming at us, and people who are dead in the center of this have been at places like Burning Man discussing this. All the other stuff that goes on, in many ways, I would argue is a front. It's a front, because there are some serious meetings that go on, and then things like a Burning Man, you need a bike. You need a bike to get around. Boris Johnson, when he was mayor of London, he brought in the Boris bikes. The whole idea of the bikes and community like that in a big city, it all came from Burning Man, because if you don't have a bike to get around, it's long walks every single day. So bikes make it easier, except when you get your bike stolen, like I did, and then I have to go and find another one, borrow another
Or
one.
you go to, like I did on my, I said this, I'm pretty sure it was my last trip to San Francisco, because I don't like to have to check drug drug needle maps and human feces maps where I'm going to be walking around the city. But it's interesting, there they have bike lanes
Yeah.
all over San Francisco, but I didn't see any bikes. So that was kind of interesting. But so
But you've just said a really interesting thing when you talk about the awful things going on in San Francisco, from a needle, or human feces and stuff like that. Burning Man, whatever's taken into Burning Man goes out. Everything is cleaned up. It is spotless by the end, which is powerful. But when in the past, I referred to the revolution in the 60s, or trying to bring that about. Before that, we've got the Frankfurt School. Then you've got cultural influences. And I just want to say this, at the Frankfurt School, third generation professors who were going there, it's Cloward and Piven, Francis Fox Piven, who is Cloward and Piven, these huge sociologists seeking change by teaching in universities. Francis Fox Piven is the aunt of Mark Carney's wife, Diane. Why am I saying this? We need to work hard to join the dots up and see all the influences. The man that brought in or pushed all the net zero crap that we have over here, did appalling things in the Bank of England, didn't go for economic growth or anything like this. He used to be the Bank of Canada. So we need to, and then work for the Bank of International Settlements. What a surprise! So we need to know this stuff as well. Maybe some people don't think they do. Fine. Well, I feel that that's part of what I do, and definitely what part of Carl does. A huge mentor to a number of us, because he's been doing this for many years and collecting all his books and his information. I know you have a number of books. Patrick Wood has a huge book collection. We have this knowledge. So as Ephesians 6 says, we're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. And a Hosea 4 verse 6 says, my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. I don't think God asks us to be stupid. If we want to go out and get the knowledge and find out what is coming down the track, I think that is really, really important. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think we're asked to just sit here and go, let's not be ill-informed.
so
Give you a quick go on. Sorry.
go ahead. Well, I was going to say, with regard to principalities and powers, though, uh, I've had some experiences in my life where I felt spiritual oppression. I mean, you can feel it if
Yeah.
you're even moderately sensitive to it. San Francisco would be one place where I
Yes, I'll
felt
get it.
many times.
Hmm.
And the other place I know I felt it was the Vatican when I
Yeah.
was there. And
Yeah.
but so in this environment of
Mm.
paganism,
Mm.
I think one of the stories out of Burning Man this year was they have a thing called the Orgy Dome, and it got destroyed in a windstorm. Praise the Lord.
Act of God. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure that might have led to some interesting conversations
Mm.
as well. But one, do you feel the spiritual oppression when you're there? And two, how do people react when you actually, in that environment, drop the gospel message in on
Um,
them?
I thank you. No, it's a brilliant question. I have to say to you that no, I didn't feel spiritual oppression there last year, but that isn't. But that I am not being flippant. I'm not saying I'm not praying for God's protection in that environment, but I believe that we have the an Almighty God, and He is with us, and you're praying for open doors, and I can say that. I know with one particular conversation, meeting a lovely guy, Ryan, last year, made a comment about climate change. I just said, well, that definition is baloney. What they're worried about, CO2, trees take it in, create oxygen. If they don't, then you and I can't breathe. But he, when you're then talking to him and saying, oh, why are you here? And then you end up saying, well, we're here to, you know, spread the gospel, and then you're having that opportunity to explain that. John, I don't think anyone has um, a resistance to that, my friend. This year, particularly with some of the conversations I hear that Carl has had, if we're not in those situations, then we can't have those discussions. I know I'm not going to go into it, but I know with things that you've shared with me about your professional life, you're in an environment. People know who you are. They know who your standards. They know what you believe. You are then given an opportunity to speak into that, and unless we are in those environments, if that's God, it's not called everyone to be there, but He's called us to be there, then we say things. I mean, I've had, since 1992, I've been in and out the film and TV industry in this situation in this country. There has been environments I've found myself in when I prayed about something with someone on the floor of the studio inside the BBC. And fortunately, you then see videotape that goes wrong, and you just think, good, that's an answer to prayer. I'm just thinking of one event. I won't go into certain details. But you then have conversations with people. If you're not in there, you can't have those conversations. And with all the lunacy that the world went through for 3 years, and lockdowns over here and all the rest, and then all that debate, what's going on, you're trying to warn people. If you're not in those environments, then you can't have those conversations. And of course, it is tough. It is the world. It is the world culture. We're called to be in the world, but not of the world. So it's how we then conduct ourselves in it. That is the challenge. But it's John. But it's also the knowledge that you then learn from that. And one particular story Carl needs to tell you. And as I've said, as you brought up Peter Thiel, we have got to be aware. In the future, if everyone's trying to catch up with AI and we need more and more and more water to do that, that's going to be quite an issue where everyone is trying to be number one in AI. And if there are any problems, I don't see China wanting to talk to America about that. I would have thought China would turn around and say, no, we just want to be number one. We don't really care. And
Well,
of course,
did you see what happened in China over the last 2 days?
with the big
The
military display.
Right, but did you also? Yeah, I mean, I do these, as you know,
Yeah.
technology roundtables with Patrick Wood and Scott
Mm.
Townsend and some
Mm.
others. We have another one coming up in about a little less than 4 weeks on October 1st. But I have to tell you that, so I watch what's going on, and it's to say that the world is very weird, strange, bizarre is a massive understatement. I don't know how to. I almost don't know how to articulate it very well to indicate what it is. But at the meeting, so at this big Shanghai Cooperative Organization
Yep.
meeting, he
Yep.
brought in all these leaders. They want to get rid of the dollar as the world reserve currency. They have these massive display of all the latest China weapons. But I don't know if you saw the hot mic discussion between President Xi and Vladimir Putin about, well, we'd both like to live to 150, and we'll just, have continuous organ transplants so we can live 250, which, by the way, makes them both less than halfway to their goal, which is scary for the world in of itself. But they're talking about transhumanism.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, walking down the street in China, and a mic picks up what they're talking about. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's talked about at Burning Man, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and and I'll take a little segue because I regularly go on at the moment. I regularly go on this Indian channel called NewsX, and I go on there for a few minutes to talk about geopolitical issue that they want to report on. And yeah, there's been a couple of days talking on what's been happening at the Shanghai Organizational Conference, which is the 25th, and I have learned a heck of a lot, but it's also been fascinating. You are keeping an eye on that. I know other people are. I know America is very concerned about what China's doing. So all of us should be. Our problem is in the UK is that we're rather embedded with them, or they're embedded with us, which is another story. But when you've got Russia, when you've got China, when you've got North Korea, and then the Indian leader Modi was there, and we've got the Ukraine-Russia war going on. We've got India buying oil off Russia and then selling it to the open market. We've got all these ghost ships that are going around distributing Russian oil, and then it's financing the Russian war effort against Ukraine and all this. We've got to know all this stuff. And also, John, here's another one. And one of the reasons I like doing the NewsX thing, one, I'm learning a heck of a lot, but at times able to say things. And when the subject is of Israel, then I'm really putting the bat really way back and trying to knock the ball out of the park. And this subject came up today when, at the time of our recording this, when they were talking about what's happening in Venezuela, the concern about the amount of aliens that you've had over the border, and there they are at Burning Man talking about legalizing hallucinogenic drugs. If we come on to the Parliament of World Religions, they're talking about that as well. But over the southern border, the amount of drugs that have come into America, along with illegal aliens. However, then you take Brazil, I think Argentina, Paraguay, if I've got my geography right, this triangle where they all meet, the fact that you've got Hezbollah and Hamas drug running into America, from South America, to raise money for their terrorist activities. And when you're asked to talk about a subject and you go and do a bit of research and you're discovering all this, I mean, Hezbollah have been doing this for a long time. When you discover all this and you think, oh my goodness me, what is going on here? No wonder, President Trump then says to the American Navy Seas or whatever, could you blow up that boat out of the water that's in international water from Venezuela that's got a load of drugs on it that's coming to America? Now, he also has a very, very strong anti-drug attitude, because I think he had a younger brother that very sadly died from alcoholism.
He does not drink alcohol at all.
That's right. So it's really, really, good for him. So it's really interesting when we start to look geopolitically what's going on. When we're looking at Russia, Ukraine, I'll come on to the Parliament of World Religions, but when I was there in 2023 in Chicago, and they're doing a seminar on that, and you're able to ask these questions. But you look at Russia. Russia has had North Korean troops in the theater of war fighting against Ukraine. I don't know. There might have been Chinese troops for all I know. I don't know. But North Koreans have been in there. Then we look at how Iran has, with drones and all the rest. We look at what's been happening in Israel. We look at the fact they want to pushing a two-state solution in the UN in September. These discussions go on at places like the Parliament of World Religions. At Burning Man, there was a group from Israel, and then you had the Israel Palestine thing playing out a little bit at Burning Man as well. So politically, the geopolitical powers, this is what is playing out all over the place. And I passionately believe that we need to understand this, because you're aware of this as well with the BRICS nations. We could argue, how are they going to replace the dollar? How far away in regard to how far down the line are they in regard to doing that is another thing. But all of these discussions are going on constantly. So for going on News X, I've learned a lot. I then think of the Parliament of World Religions, and I want to move on to that.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's sort of related. Also, our mutual friend Carl, has been attending those for a while. I know I sort of tortured myself a couple times. I think I watched the one in Toronto about, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years ago, and then the one in Chicago a couple years ago where you were at. So talk a little bit about the Parliament of World Religions, and why would you as a Christian even bother going there?
Right. Well, the first Parliament of World Religions happened in 1893. And I would say to you that is where, to me, Eastern religions were really, or Eastern religious thought was really brought into America. It was a big sort of Chicago-esque exhibition and world fair. And the first one was 1893. Excuse me. There was a 100-year break.
By the way, my I have an urn. We have a couple of urns that we got from my mother, from my grandparents, and my great-grandparents, that were purchased at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago.
Wow.
Sitting upstairs on the mantle. So
brilliant. You have to send me pictures of those. That is amazing. Well, that is amazing, because it was a huge influence over time on American culture. So the second one was in 1993. There was a 100-year gap, and then they happen. I don't know. Is it every 4 years or something like this? But
2, 3, 4 years, whatever they can.
So the Parliament, absolutely, the Parliament of World
to get them together, I guess.
Yeah, but the Parliament of World Religions says it what it does. It's a parliament of all the world religions coming together. And I have to say to you, but the religion that they don't want is ours, right? They don't want Jesus. They want this is my opinion, they want their view of Jesus. And to me,
and by the way, in the 1893 Parliament of World Religions was largely a lot of Christians. This is the time when you can actually use the scare quotes. But it was really the start of what we now know and see all the time, and we see growing in these things, which appears to be the end times to us, the interfaith movement started.
Absolutely. And Unitarianism and all this. You're absolutely right. And of course, Carl has written a lot on this for many years. But when you go, I describe going into the Parliament as walking into the Death Star, some of the stuff going on, pagan rituals and all this. And I'm just going, these people are nuts. But it was important to be in there and witness things. And why, as a Christian? Well, I'm thinking one day Carl and I were going, we thought we were trying to find one seminar, because that particular year, it didn't seem to be signposted very well. And we were down in the basement of the big exhibition center there. And there were wonderful, typical American guys sitting there, workmen who work in the building. And I remember I went up to them. We had a conversation. I said, do you know what's going on? And they went, no. And I said, do you want to know what's going on? Well, yeah. And I said, well, all that's going on here is plotting, working towards a one world government system. And it's like, what? I said, well, it's plotting against
I
your
set up
nation.
chairs for that.
Yeah. Very good, John. That's brilliant. And I said, they're plotting against your nation and your life and what you stand for. And they're like, and we made them think. Carl and I made them think. It was a really wonderful conversation, actually. I thank them for that. But they said, oh, thank you for telling us. You know, it was like, we're going to have to think about this. But you're right. We set up chairs and an exhibition for this. But we ended up in a seminar. We walked into this room. There were tables in the round. And we walked in and we sat behind the tables. And then the guy goes, oh, we're under Chatham House rules. So Carl and I got our phones out and we're recording this. And I am in the room with a guy that used to be Obama's religious advisor, right? And there was another English woman in the room, and I decided not to go up to her. It was fine, but I've forgotten who she is. I need to find out. But what it is about this whole thing of influence. It's this whole thing of influence, and they are building towards, as you quite rightly say, the one world faith, towards a one world faith, but excluding us. And that is what is coming about. And I don't know why there aren't coach loads, bus loads, car loads of Americans in attendance, because you would go along there and learn so much. And as you know, one of the seminars I will have to come back to, because there's a theme here, because suddenly I'm in a seminar with Richard Raw and another Baptist Union type woman and someone else, where they're all talking about, you know, having an amazing religious experience with Jesus as long as we take hallucinogenic drugs. And I'm like sitting on my hands going, let me at them. This is an outrage. Richard Raw, we know that Enneagram and all this wrongness, but basically bringing in the new age. So again, that is what's going on. So when people go, what is going on?
Rohr is a panentheist.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's one of the most influential people in the development and the bringing in of Eastern and Catholic mysticism into the evangelical church. And he's accepted, and now he's pushing this thing called the Enneagram. My friends at Midwest Christian Outrage, I would say Midwest Christian Outrage. No, it's Midwest Christian Outreach.
Don would like that. It is.
Yeah, I know, Don. and the book that Marcia Montenegro has written on the Enneagram. And I've spoken on it many times at conferences, but this is all connected. Rohr and Merton and the Dalai Lama.
And
I don't really think we understand the depth and breadth of how this is connected. And then you see Rohr bringing this Enneagram in, and you see again, I use the evangelical word in scare quotes, or as I like to call them, the evangelifish. But Andy Stanley and all these people, and pushing the Enneagram at these massive pastors' conferences where they have 15,000 pastors, evangelical pastors from around the country in attendance, and they just accept it like, well, that everybody's talking about it, so it must be okay.
Everyone
over so you can continue.
No, it doesn't matter, but everyone is talking about it, which means it's not okay. So when you're hearing, I think the important thing is we're hearing the stuff from their own mouth. I mean, the whole thing of this, what was it, Rob Bell all those years ago, the emerging church movement and all this kind of nonsense, but actually it's not nonsense. It's wrong. And then there you've got liberation theology. You've got, and the social gospel, all of this, Marxism, both of those, all of this, there it is within, and it's one big loving, and why can't we all get on and all the rest? But there were, there's occasions for opportunity. That there are some people there that are searching. They are searching for the truth, and conversations happen. But it's like the same. Some of the people I went with there who become dear friends, and then they as Carl has gone, they've gone to Pananicon, or as I call it, Pagan Icon, where they go to, this whole thing of where it's all witches and occult exhibition, but they go in, again, go in to find out what is going on. Because when these people gather, it's the spirit, the spiritual energy that they are bringing, and that is of the enemy and of the occult. We don't go in there stupidly. We don't go in there blindly. We go in there with our armor on, but we have an almighty God that goes with us and protects us and clears the way, and also enables us to be informed, to be informed. So again, it's another cultural changer. And you've mentioned, when you talk about the Enneagram, and of course, dear Don, who I know work on all of this.
Well,
And just
wasn't Don at the Parliament with you guys?
Yeah, he was in 2023. He was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one other privilege to meet him. So it's when people are sounding the alarm to this, when you are listening to, one of the big things was at the Parliament, I went in to have a discussion, to hear 4 mayors talk, one from San Antonio in Texas. They are talking about, well, our role is not to ask for papers. Our ask is to ask the illegal immigrants, how can we help? That helped 250,000 by the time of 2023. So in a couple of years of the Biden administration and the chaos. And of course, there'd been Jan 6, which is a subject very close to my heart, Jan 6, 2021. And there was one seminar there on the rise of white Christian nationalism and the threat to our democracy. And with the course in Washington University, where it's talking about basically the threat of domestic terrorism and other things, you see that this is laid out. It's putting propaganda and thought into people's minds. And I always find it fascinating in America when they use the word democracy. You are not a democracy, you're a constitutional republic with alienable rights. You use the democratic means of voting to exercise those constitutional rights in all the layers of your government. And I don't think civics is taught properly anymore in your country. That has been a concern of mine over the last few years, if I may say that respectfully. But
well, and we don't have time. You've done a lot of work on the J6 issue here in America, and we don't really have time to talk about today. And I'm looking at the time. We're trying to keep this to an hour to fit within Mark's program time limits. So it's either speed everything up or actually finish on time. But I want to talk to you. So now you've just brought up the attack on democracy or representative government and everything that we see coming out of these places. And by the way, one other thing that I've noticed a lot is all these guys that have been through the business program at the London School of Economics. That seems to be a very common Harvard School of Business, London School of Economics, or Harvard School of Government, and World Economic Forum and everything. So let's just pivot across to your place in the UK, because I'm seeing things going. We talk about it a lot, you and I. What is going on over there?
Well, let's try and do it in a few minutes.
Sure.
One is we're nearly bankrupt. We are run by, as far as I'm concerned, a bunch of people that are ideologically communist. If they're not all members of the Fabian Society, then I'll eat my hat. And what do I mean? So the Fabian Society set up, I think, 1884. The Fabian Society is a group of people that ideologically they don't believe in borders. They don't believe in nation states. In the end, by this time, and they, in my own words, it is either bringing in a technocratic tyranny or communism. And I believe now that as a nation, we can look back in history that we have been under attack by this for a long, long time that people may not have realized. So the Attlee government that took over Churchill after the war, Churchill was running the war. Clement Attlee, who's head of the Labour Party, we had a unified government to take us through the war. We had a war government. Clement Attlee was number two, and he run the country. Clement Attlee was a member of the Fabian Society. He immediately won the election after the war, much to Churchill's shock, maybe much to many people's shock in this country. They wanted a difference. So Clement Attlee came in. Many of the Labour members at that time were members of the Fabian Societies. Let's quickly go back. So the Webbs, Mr. and Mrs. Webb, they went to the Soviet Union. They thought the Soviet Union was fantastic. What's the problem with the Soviet Union? It was then called out in round about 1931-32, according to a great book by Giles Udy, Labor in the Gulag. We were ordering timber supplies from Russia. We then worked out that timber was being loaded onto boats by people that were in gulags. We then have to go back. We go back to Stalin. We then have to realize that from maybe around about 1917 onwards, he started building gulags. He started building prison camps. He started building camps because people had the wrong opinions. Does that sound familiar? And then, of course, it leads later on to the very famous person of Alexander Solzhenitsyn when he wrote his books, Gulag Archipelago. And so all of this politically, and it comes down to tyranny. I believe, where are we at? We've just had a comedian. We have a situation now where you could argue that between 30 and 33 people a day are arrested for what they've said on Twitter or on social media. We are arresting more people for that than the Russians do. We've just had an awful case on. You and I are recording this on Thursday, Friday, and on Monday of this week, we had Graham Linehan, who is Linehan, who's a very celebrated comedy writer. He wrote a series that I found hilarious called Father Ted. And I actually worked on the last series of that in the studio. Graham was arrested. He has been someone that's pushed back against all the trans activism. Men turning around and saying, well, I'm a woman dressing up as a woman, going into girls and ladies' toilets and all of this. And he's pushed out against that.
Well, by the way, this was not just somebody saw the post.
Yep.
And decided to arrest him eventually. They had 5 policemen meet him at, I don't know if it was Heathrow or whatever.
Yeah, Heathrow. Yeah.
Which is and it was it's done for show to intimidate other people.
Absolutely. And this is what's going on. There is Starmer was a member of, so they arrested him. The police had guns because they have guns at Heathrow Airport. That's the only time that, well, there are other people that do, special groups, but the police at the airports are armed. It was all done for show. He'd sent 4 tweets in April from, I think, Arizona, which he's now had to live. This is a gentleman that's been through so much that's lost his.
So he did it in America where we have free speech.
Yeah.
And he gets back to the UK.
Absolutely.
Which is where we get our common law roots and Magna Carta. He's arrested upon arrival.
Absolutely.
Taken to jail. I think he ended up in the hospital too, didn't
he? Yes, he did. He sadly, his blood pressure went far too high. So
Well,
they
my
took
blood
him.
pressure went up when it happened, when I read about it too. So
Right. Well, I want your blood pressure to be okay, but I hear you.
it's not come down yet, but
Right. Okay. I hear you. So he was taken off to accident emergency. Fortunately, is fine now under the Free Speech Union, which is which is a wonderful group that's going to represent him. He's now saying, "I'm going to sue the Met." The whole thing was out of order, but we are having this now. I'm just going to say this, and John, if we go over an hour, it doesn't matter because it's also on your platform. But this is what's really important. There was an article written, I think, January, February of 2020, in a left-wing, Labour-orientated magazine called Labour Heartland. In there, it talked about the fact that Keir Starmer used to be a member of the Trilateral Commission. I think he resigned from that in 2022. The then leader of the Labour Party, Corbyn, didn't know that. Well, the Trilateral Commission is, of course, our dear friend Patrick Wood's expertise. He wrote the book Trilaterals over Washington, etc., with AC Sutton. So this, and one thing we're going to have to, here's an important piece of history. The Trilateral Commission were then part of, in my opinion, Carter was their man. Carter comes in. We have to remember under the Carter administration, which was only one term, what a surprise, they then worked to get rid of the Shah. They weren't very helpful there, and then brought in Ayatollah Nutbag from Paris. He then comes in. It's like people had warned and said if the mullahs take over, they're going to turn it into this theocratic Islamic State, which of course they did. All the Marxists that joined in with overthrowing the Shah were then killed. So this is all relevant to what's happening here because politically, I believe we are seeing a joining of the green and the red axis of Islam and left wing politics, Marxism. You are seeing.
I'm going to share a picture of Carter's right hand man here, Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Absolutely, it's a big, yep.
And I will say, I don't remember where I found this drawing or photo.
Yeah.
But he was a very bad man.
Yes, he was.
He has shaped American foreign policy, he and Henry Kissinger, for quite
Another
some time.
Man.
But I think this picture is one of the greatest pictures I've ever seen that captures the inner essence of the man.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the other point to make is that his daughter presents Morning Joe with Scarborough.
Yeah, Mika Brzezinski.
Mika Brzezinski is his daughter.
I've often joked that someday Joe Scarborough, they're married now, of course.
Yeah.
And a number of years down the road, he's going to roll over in bed some morning and look over, and he's going to see the female version of this picture.
Well,
that's what I would call justice.
Yeah. Well, this man has a heck of a lot to answer for in regard to what has led in regard to Middle Eastern politics, and also I'll just need to say this. I think at this point, to then set it in the modern context. So the reason why Iran then has all the run towards creating the bomb and all the whole thing of the nuclear technology that they have is because Obama, as Victor David Hansen recently explained this brilliantly, because I was trying to get my head around what was American foreign policy, what was Obama up to. So he's then taking Zubrinsky model, I think, even further. So Obama said, well, if we give all this to Iran and help them to build a bomb, etc., then what will happen? That will then even up what's happening in the Middle East with Israel, of course, who he dislikes, and then did whatever he could to get rid of whatever people think of Bibi Netanyahu. You don't interfere with another country's politics or seek to overthrow a leader, which he did. try and do that. So Obama then wanted Iran to be equal, have the bomb, then you're equal to Israel and maybe other countries in regard to Saudi Arabia, the Arab Emirates, and all the rest. And then America could sit in the middle and just adjudicate and work out who they want to be on the side of, and shall we let that person fire off a missile and then say to them, just take the hit? I don't know. But it's this whole thing of leveling up, which is just an outrage, because then he allowed that and leveled that up and gave a bunch of mullahs, nutbags, and evil people access to potentially creating a nuclear bomb. Hence why there was bombing of Fodor, etc., by those amazing planes that you have. And this whole threat, and then of course into the Mahdi ideology and this whole threat. So this is where, if we look at it, foreign policy creep has, I believe, has then reached that point, even though many years ago Bibi was warning about that. And I think in 1989 they then dealt with Iraq's build up in regard to maybe Iraq's nuclear capability. When we and America went into Iraq, then Iran started keeping quiet because they thought they were next. All of this kind of thing and changings, interfering, regime change, that's why we have to look at these people. But coming back to the UK, Starmer then was a member of the Trilateral Commission, I believe, 2017 to 2022. He has, like other people, as far as I'm concerned, he has a problem with the truth. He's a liar. They don't know how to run the country. I believe passionately that, yes, we are under judgment. We are being judged. In 1973, we were taken in by Ted Heath into the European Union, into the common market, which becomes the European Union. It was always about a big European political project. It was a way of then trading without having to pay tariffs and stuff like that. So we joined that, and many people thought, what a wonderful idea. In 1975, we then had a referendum on that to come out. We lost the sovereignty of our nation. I don't care what people say. We lost control of that. Then in 2000, and this is all relevant to what's going on, then in 2016, we voted to leave. 17,410,752 people, with a majority of over 1 million, voted out. Keir Starmer had become an MP in 2015, taking a seat in the Holborn area in London. Frank Dobson, a very well-known previous Labour MP who died, he then took his seat. Starmer is an international lawyer. He is a globalist. In 1986, I think, he either did some interesting, he was in Yugoslavia, I think, or Czechoslovakia. There is the Russia has a file on him and all this. Our friend Trevor Loudon, we need to go to him and get more information on that. But he's an international lawyer. That's what he believes in. We, jumping ahead from 2016, when we voted to leave, he did whatever he could, like other members of parliament, inside parliament, to stop that happen. When Boris Johnson won and became leader of the Conservatives, they're not Conservatives as far as I'm concerned. They're Tories, which is another interesting subject, which is establishment, which is the Church of England, which is supporting the King. Just so happens we now have King Charles III. We executed King Charles I. We put King Charles II came back, but we all seem to have a problem with kings called Charles. I'll just throw that out. So in 2019, Boris Johnson then became leader of the Conservative Party. He then had an election. He won a massive majority on let's get Brexit done. Boris is no Conservative. He's a liberal, as far as I'm concerned, within the Conservative Party at that time. David Cameron, the previous Prime Minister, took over from Tony Blair. Gordon Brown. He was seen as the heir to Blair. Blair, as far as I'm concerned, is a radical lefty, radical communist in a suit. His policy was to have an open door. We started having that in regard to mass immigration. For many years, people in this country have voted against that. It's continued. Now we have all this invasion. It is an invasion. We've had 30,000 illegal immigrants come over this year, 50,000 since the Labour government came into power. They won't stop it. There's a very easy way to stop it. You put the Navy in. You either send scuba divers down, you slash all the boats, you get rid of them. On the French side,
you're kind of an island there, as I recall.
Oh,
geography from like third grade.
And it's just absolutely. But ideologically, because they believe in open borders, and this goes back to the whole Fabian Society and what had happened, and we've touched on this before in our discussion. Someone raised a very interesting comment over here that said when George Orwell wrote 1984, it was called 1984 because he thought that the Fabian Society would have taken over by 1984, having been established in 1894. I never knew that, and I thought this was a fascinating comment because now they've basically done it. What am I saying? We've referred to the Frankfurt School. We've referred to professors who referred to people rioting on the streets and then becoming professors in university and then espousing their views on American young people. We know what's been going on in Harvard. We know what's been going on in Columbia. When you go back to Germany at that time, when it's this greater political, greater higher thinking, people are thrown out the Bible. It's what's been taught from universities. And this is why of the big influence. That's why Donald Trump has turned around and said, well, I don't want, I want Harvard, Columbia, I think has come to an agreement, but I don't want federal funding going there anymore until you stop the anti-Semitism. So they have got all the levers of power in our institutions. They have played a long game. It's taken a long time for some of us to see this. And now we see it I definitely see it. And for the first time, suddenly on a sort of fairly mainstream news channel, radio show, I'll send you the link. There was a discussion about the Fabian Society. And I am laughing, going, I've talked about this at last because I don't have a big platform like them. Now you see it. It's not a conspiracy. The Fabians believe in having a revolution without firing a gun. That's the whole idea. Now, if we went back to Stalin again, Trotsky, the Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin was sent across Europe. They put him in a cart. They sealed that so it didn't open in Germany. There's bankers involved in financing. We haven't necessarily got the time to go through this, but we know that banks, they very often finance by both sides of a war and all this. So where are we at? We are at the fact that when Keir Starmer sit next door to Donald Trump and say, well, I love free speech. We've always got free speech. No, we do not seem to be having that at the moment. It seems to be challenged. Now, I'm not saying this to be big-headed, but I think publicly I'm the only one that seems to have said there's a connection between Jan 6, connection between the Canadian convoy, and connection between the way people were treated after the Southport awful incident in Southport, where 3 girls aged, I think, 7, 8, and 9 were literally bludgeoned to death by someone called Axel Ruta-Cabana. They were at a Taylor Swift dance class. Other young children in it were awfully injured, and the dance teachers as well, when this nutter went in with a machete and started cutting up these poor young children. That caused such an outrage. And what people like Lucy Connolly, there's a lot of details to go through with Southport, but people like Lucy Connolly tweeted out something and then she took it down, regretted what she's saying, but she was reacting. Someone who's a mother of one child, she had lost another. Sadly, her other child had died in the hospital under medical neglect. Seems it was just awful. She was then given a sentence for 30 months, Why am I saying this? In the presidential election of Kamala Harris v. DJT, a number of people from the British Labour Party went over to help the Kamala Harris campaign, which is, you could argue, they shouldn't be doing. But Yvette Cooper, our Home Secretary, I think worked for the Clinton campaign all those years ago. I'm not sure if it was the first administration or the second, but we do know the Chinese put bits of money into the second Clinton administration. I'll just throw that out. So there's a tie-up. The Canadian convoy, the FBI, were giving information to the Canadian authorities in regard to that. Most will be helping with freezing of bank accounts, using phones to locate people, and all these people talk to each other. So let's go to another level. Starmer recently, a number of months ago, was in Brazil. In, I think, 2023, at the back end of that, was in Canada, meeting Justin Trudeau, and then Jacinda Ardern, that ex-leader of New Zealand that locked New Zealand down and caused chaos, who turned around and said, you only must come to us for news. You must only watch this news channel. We are the news. We are propaganda. That's in the lockdown years. He met up with her.
We are the only source of truth that you need
Precisely,
to listen to.
precisely. So it becomes 1984. Thank you. But they all know each other. Starmer knows Lula. Lula knows, they all, Starmer knows then Justin Trudeau, Albanese in Australia. Albanese, who for many years has been student politics, Palestine supporter and all this. Why am I saying this? Because if you look at the connections, this is all we're interested in as an international agenda. All we are then eventually would like a one world government. But actually what we want is the judiciary to decide everything. So we have now got judges that, as far as I'm concerned, are ideologically weaponized. Does that sound familiar in regard to the recent Biden administration?
So the answer to your question is yes, because you're tying up so many rabbit trails in what you say, because I'm looking at a picture here of 3 Trilateral Commission members, or former members, Starmer, Mark Carney from Canada, and Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany. All Trilateral Commission members. So maybe Patrick Wood needs to update his trilaterals over Washington to trilaterals over the North Atlantic or something.
Well, do you know what? I've actually thought of this. The great Trevor Loudon, when he's let's try and see if I can find it. I do apologize. It's here. One of Trevor's books, The Enemies Within.
Absolutely, a must read for anybody who wants to begin to understand what's going on.
Well, the fact that Trevor then has named all of the politicians in regard to America, I've thought about this. I think I need to go through all the members, 651 members of the parliament, inside our own parliament. I will just throw this out just quickly.
While I'm thinking about it, Bolsonaro.
Yes.
And who Luna was imprisoned.
Yep.
The current president of Brazil.
Yep.
He was imprisoned, and by law, he was prohibited from running from office.
Yep.
But they got, I call him Lefty Looney Luna.
Yep.
They got judges to overturn that law.
Yep.
He was allowed to run. He beat Bolsonaro. And as we speak, as we're recording this, Bolsonaro is on trial, literally facing life imprisonment for having the audacity to challenge the results of the election. And
absolutely.
He is a good Christian man. I know people who know him personally.
Yep.
He's a big supporter of Israel. In addition to that, I don't know. I think we use the term tip of the spear too many times and not enough.
I hear you.
At the same time, because all of these things are interconnected. So the slow takeover of institutions. So I just I'll share you a quick story. So I went to a Christian college. I'm conservative. My parents went to a very conservative Christian college. I was raised this way. My dad was a minister. I went to public school, but even after the Supreme Court said, "Hey, you can't have devotions at school," we still had devotions at school, and which is kind of interesting. But this when I graduated from college, went to graduate school, sociology, criminology. And the first semester I'm there, one of my professors, young PhD, who ended up leading the sociology department at the University of Colorado for many years, his book was a book by a guy named Quinney. It was called Critique of Legal Order. And it was pure Marxism, how to overtake the legal system.
Yeah.
Tear it down and take it over.
Yeah.
And I told Bob, the professor, I said, I'm gonna give you the answer, because I was a grad assistant and he was in the office. I wasn't his grad assistant, but he was in the office next door. And I said, I'm gonna give you the answers you want, so I get my A on the exam. But don't ever make me read that garbage again. Because it's fake. It's not true. It's revolutionary. I know it. You know it. And just stop it. Well, I know he didn't stop it. But by the way, his whole life research was devoted to studying police and their attitudes.
Wow.
Which is kind of interesting because he was a radical left-wing Marxist. And I'm telling you that all of this stuff is so interconnected. And yes, I might add, as I talk about a lot, it's prophetic and related to Bible prophecy in so many ways.
It absolutely is, because let's pin that down. We have now, I believe, a weaponized judiciary. Over the Southport, there were riots. I'm not saying that the violence is right, or the burning of this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that, but the people's frustration, they've had enough. Now, there was, I believe, there were certain things that went out there that didn't help, that saying that the murderer was a Welsh choir boy and all this kind of thing. And suddenly, unfortunately, on social media, it went out that he was a recent immigrant into this country. His family, I think, were from Rwanda that have been here for some time. Now, all of this, then suddenly Starmer, they have courts up that are running 24 hours and people are banged up all over the place. So when they want to do it, they can then put people on trial quickly. And unfortunately, people took a plea deal, so to speak, that you'd understand, which they shouldn't have done. If they were innocent of things, they should have said, I'm innocent, and gone to trial, like one or two have, and then they haven't ended up in prison. So there are certain signals that are being put out, and then it's, the far right and all this. Well, we don't have a far right problem in this country. We have a far left problem in this country. So they've now got the levers of power, but you're absolutely right in connecting the dots. Mark Carney is another massive one. What you're saying legally, because we have to look at the judiciary in regard to Israel, and why, if Bibi wants to sack the leader of the Shin Bet, and then they're told, oh no, you can't do this, that top lawyer, the woman says, oh no, you can't do that. And this goes back to understanding the perceived left and right within Israel. That is what people have got to understand within Israeli politics. But the reason why I'm talking about this is to connect the dots worldwide. And John, it's really important. I want to say something.
Let me just interrupt you, because I just was getting ready. I sort of looked at it briefly. An article at a great website, jcpa.org. It's now called the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. They've got several articles. Everybody needs to go to jcpa.org and watch them. I will talk about some of these on Sunday. But one of the lead article up on their website right now, listen to the title of this in light of what you just said is going on in Israel, where the judiciary and the attorney general are essentially overthrowing the government.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
The title of the article is The Impact of Radical Legal Ideology from the Classroom to the International Forum.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a brilliant article that really sort of encapsulates all the stuff that
we're discussing, and
we're trying to discuss, and we don't really have
yeah.
enough time to do. We will continue this. So this is part one of a series
Yeah.
of these that we're going to do.
Brilliant. But John, I just want to make this important point because it's very important to me to say. I am really, really grateful for you saying, let's do this. I want to say this publicly to you. There are one or two others as well across the pond. I am very grateful for the interest that you show in the UK and what's going on, because sadly, I feel that people don't, or it would be nice to hear from people going, hello, how are you? And what's going on. The church over here is, no thanks, is asleep, etc. There is an attitude of, we'll just sit back and let certain things unfold. Now, that's why I want to say this to you, because I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for your inquiring mind to say, Mark, what is going on? Because I know that when you've messaged me, it's like, what the heck is going on? What is going on in your country? This is going lunacy. And it's a leg. The EU is a leg of global governance. We have then gone back into Europe, basically, but without actually giving the name of that, which is, we've gone virtually back into Europe, but without, as I say, without naming it. This prime minister, this political class have conspired against the democratic decision of the people within the United Kingdom. It was a vote that was won fair and square. If those people, those of us that believe in Brexit as Brexiteers who voted to come out, if we had lost, we would have accepted it. But here's the key thing. If you are not in charge of your own language, your own money supply, your own laws, and your own borders, then you are not a country anymore. And I'll say this as well. Batayor wrote a book, I think Jewish Israeli writer, wrote a book called Dimitude. And in it, she writes that in 1973, there was a thinking that came in to the common market that led to the European Union, because the French being mainly at the center of this, that because they want oil, that basically the Islamic culture would be viewed with favor, because it's ex-empire over time, that it became the European Arab dialogue. This was never explained to the European people at all. And that over time, then of course, it has led to mass immigration, thanks to people like Angela Merkel in 2015 that just opened the gate.
About Melanie Phillips' book, Londonistan?
Yeah, brilliant book.
You know that book? I just looked it up while we're talking. It's almost 20 years old. And I remember I was in the UK 7 years ago. And I've said this. Our hotel, 4 blocks from Speaker's Corner, had 50 TV stations at the Marriott. 10 of them were Arabic language, solely Arabic with no subtitles. And I saw more burqas in central London than I did when I was in Nablus, in the Arab area, Muslim area, the west of Samaria.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. And basically, this is there has been a push. I'll be a little bit careful what I'm saying, not because I'm not afraid to say it, but I don't want to drop anyone in it. So
and I want to come over there and play golf. I don't want to get arrested when I.
No, you'll be fine.
Waiting for my clubs.
Yeah, you'll be fine. But the 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 key thing is that within the television industry, there has been a real push and a control that has come, I believe, from 10 Downing Street a number of years ago, to then say, well, if you're going to commission programs, then you cannot employ people who have this thought. You cannot have employed people that have that thought. You need to throw things out there. Now, none of this is then explained to the British people. And when the people of these amazing islands have voted time and time again to stop illegal immigration, and it doesn't happen, people have had enough, because we've recently had this incredible protest in Epping. There's a migrant hotel called the Bell Hotel. There are illegal migrants in there. It's next door to a school. The girls are being lured at. There was one man that was arrested for profoundly inappropriate behavior sexually to someone I think a young girl in that area. Has now been arrested, found guilty of that, I believe, and or proven, they go to court. Now, there is mums come out, grandmothers come out, aunts come out, the pink ladies, to say, shut this hotel down. The government were taken to court over this by the local council, Epping Council. Epping Council lost, the government won, and a judge called Judge Bean, who was a member of the Fabian Society, I think, or head of it, 89 to 90, then ruled that the hotel would stay open. And so suddenly a load of people in this country are feeling that illegal immigrants have got far more rights than the people who are indigenous to this country. And also, as you know, there are all the flag wars going up. There is a culture war like that. And the big thing I will ask people to pray for, we must not see violence on our streets. I can honestly say to you that I just think that in many ways the state would like to push for violence. We don't want that. I will be coming up in a few days. There's going to be a march in London against anti-Semitism. There will then be a march, Tommy Robinson march, later on in about a week's time. I will be there as well. So I'd appreciate your prayers for that. But please, you people, anyone watching, and it is a real privilege to be able to talk about this and have a platform, please pray for our nation. Please pray that it doesn't turn into a civil war situation. I am not saying it will. I'm not saying it won't. But I'm also not dramatically escalating that. What I ask is that you will pray that people will have the courage to protest peacefully, no violence, no nothing, and that on one sense the state will reveal who they are, because it's overstepping the mark. And I will say this, that unfortunately this whole thing of a non-hate crime, where 33 people a day are being arrested for this, for their tweets or their comments, that was brought in by a so-called Conservative Party. The online safety bill was started by a so-called Conservative Party. We have two wings of the same bird, a two-party system. And within the Conservative Party, we have a lot of liberals, a lot of centrists, a lot of people that didn't believe in Brexit. We have within our parliament, I'll just end with this, you have Labour, you have Conservative, you have the Lib Dems, you have the Welsh Nats, Irish Independent, Greens. And when we were voting for to leave the European Union, they were all saying, oh, we shouldn't leave. And I turned around and said, well, it sounds as though we're living in a communist state. That's where we're at. If God is going to give us a period of grace and push back against this, fine. I don't necessarily see that, because I think prophetically we are in a time when we are racing. Hear me, I'm not date setting or anything, but we are closer to Christ's return because we see the way things are building up. And the warning to America is this, has been explained by many people greater than me. The piece of paper that stands in the way of a one world government system is the Constitution of the United States. That's it, what it stands for. And just because you have a president in America, John and I, you talk about this, where we're transactional with Trump, just because he's in there, there's a duality going on. Because on the one hand, AI, on the other hand, there's the Trump equivalent of Bitcoin and all this. Then there's Peter Thiel. Then there's Peter Thiel's relationship with J.D. Vance. People don't want to face this, but there's a duality going on. And the other duality is happening within the judicial system. That's why I brought up Israel, because they're trying to overturn the government. And this is what's going on. So we've got to face the fact that all these governments talk to each other. And it's brilliant you raised that about Bolsonaro. Lula was in prison, came from nowhere, total unionist, Gramsci acolyte, and all this in regard to belief. But this is what's going on, and that's why I'm grateful to you to be able to talk about it, because sometimes I just think in America they're not really interested. As long as it's happening in America, then we're interested. Otherwise, we're not interested at all. I have many friends on your side of the pond, as you know, and I don't say that with any, don't mean to be rude or condemning, but sometimes it's hurtful, because for many of us outside, we've been screaming. I made Between Lambs and Lions in 2015, for crying out loud. As a film, is all about this. We've been screaming and warning, and please take a warning. We are also looking to you. Very interesting that Farage has been before Congress talking about free speech, with Harriet Hageman from Wyoming doing a fantastic job, in drilling that down. Okay, great. I'm glad. It's good that Nigel's been over, but this is an issue. We should have the freedom, we always thought, to express an opinion. We don't have to be violent. We don't have to be rude. But when we're seeing comedians being arrested, this is completely and utterly out of order. So, as I say, that's what we need prayer for in this nation. And there are some Christians over here that think, oh, we're going to turn it around. It's going to go on and on and on, and they're not paying attention to the fact that I believe passionately that we are in the last days. I'm not sure where we are on that timeline. Do I want to go through some of the tough times that are coming? No, I don't. But I passionately believe we're going to go through it, John. That's it. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's, I'm thinking, Bernard Lewis, Clash of Civilizations and all these things. And you and we got to get Melanie too. We need to get an interview.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna just pay tribute to her. I would love that. She has written some incredible books. One book she wrote, which when I was teaching, sort of really changed my sort of life. I suddenly realized that I taught at this specialist unit for expelled children just to get a hold of this book. And she wrote a book called All Must Have Prizes, which was being so prophetically and being so ahead of our education system. And then this whole thing of that meritocracy is going out the window. Everyone's winning a prize. And it goes along with all cultures are equal. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Well, she has a new book out called The Builder's Stone.
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah. And I mean, we could just do a whole big interview on that, about how, I think the subtitle is How Jews and Christians Built the West and Why Only They Can Save It. And this all plays into this whole thing that we talk about all the time, Bible prophecy and everything. And I next time we talk, one of the things we got to talk about is your trip to Israel, the impact that it had, and I'm heading over there a couple times over the next 6 weeks. And well, I mean, there's so much to talk about. It's like we could just start the Mark and John channel and just stick
Well, it'd be brilliant not to
24/7.
Yeah, and I want to I just want to give a shout out to you, John, because I will be when I get back in a couple of weeks' time, if not sooner. I'm going to be starting a show with a dear friend of mine, Nathan Barnard, and we want you on there. I went to Israel with Nathan. Nathan is a Messianic Jew, just written recently a book about Bible prophecy. And I want to get you two together because there's a lot of discussion to have that's really important. And I'll say it again, I am grateful for this conversation and I'm grateful for your interest because this is what is really, really important. And also culturally, sometimes people from America, they don't understand our politics. They just think it's Nigel Farage, respectfully, and stop. It's not. I've just talked about where we're at, and it's been a long game, and we are at a point nearly of finish where the country's done. But I don't want to say that it's in God's hands. But that is how I feel, because we will not see another election until 2029, and if this bunch of clowns stay in, then the country's wrecked. We are completely and utterly bankrupt. There's far too many people then on the public purse. There is not a push I could see taxes through the roof. If they end up calling in the International Monetary Fund, then the International Monetary Fund will set all the controls. So in other words, all those people that were Remainers, they're laughing because they think, well, we're back in Europe in name without naming that. And now we've lost the sovereignty of our country. We want to be ruled by Europe and Belgium. And just finally, if people have never seen the television series Yes Minister, look it up. And there's some classic scenes in there. One with the Israeli ambassador and how he talks to the British Prime Minister. Absolutely hilarious. But it was funny, but another serious point, when it was noted that in 1992, when we joined in 73 in regard to the common market, and by 1992, suddenly all this paperwork and all this diktat suddenly coming down, and members of parliament were very, very happy to hand over control to government, to the European Union. And people were never asked. We were never asked that we would be then a member of global governance. That's why we voted to leave. It was explained. I made something called Flexit, the movie, the definitive guide of how the UK could lead the EU and defend its economy, presented by the wonderful Dr. Richard North and Christopher Booker. And they both used to write for the Daily Telegraph. Sadly, Christopher's no longer with us, but they wrote a book called The History of Europe and the Great Deception. John, I'm going to stop because I know I could go on all night. But
Mark,
thank you.
Let's do this soon again. And it's hard though because we're both busy. We're both all doing things and trying to. I feel like I'm, the little Dutch boy, and I've run out of fingers to put in holes in the dice.
Bless you.
And I know you feel the same way too. So look, there'll be links, the Sutherland report, and I'll put links in the show notes on my channel where you can connect with Mark. Okay. So Mark, thanks a lot. And we'll do it. So I'm going to end the recording and I'll talk to you on the other side. Give me just one moment.